I guess so if I had to make a recommendation, especially to guys, that, is to make sure that you and your wife are on the same page, and that God is in the midst of it, and understanding that it's a team effort, and you have to give, it's 50-50, it's not 25-75, or, inside of the support, and just understanding that things are going to get messy and they're going to get hard, and you're going to have to communicate a lot to make sure that you're on the same page.
I'd say the most important part. Yeah. Like I said, to me it was a little more normal because I had seen it, in my family. But even inside of that, it was because, one, we're called, like biblically, like, you care for the widow and the orphan. How you do that is more of a personal calling of God on your life.
It's where you have to be grounded in, because it's not all, unicorns and rainbows every day when you have kids in your house. It's not.
I mean, we say a lot, like, I don't know how people do it without God. Yeah.
Really,
because when you come to those hard places, that's, again, where you go back to, you run to God, and
God just works inside of the process, inside of our lives. It's never about the end result. It's always about what you do every day, and Him in the midst of that. And it's like, it's a broken world that we live in, and so if you can't be grounded in a foundation of, faith and hope and love and Christ, it's you become, I don't know how you wouldn't become jaded.
In my life right now, especially inside of foster care, a lot more I knows that I will run back to. And if you didn't have God, you wouldn't have those. You wouldn't have those points or those, I almost see them like posts that you can hold on to when everything's swirling around you, and be like, but I know this, because I've seen it. I've seen awful situations where He's placed His hand and changed it. We've seen the awful, we've seen, the things you don't understand, and we've also seen the opposite. And you have to see God inside of those, or you're gonna be blown around, because it is broken. So we have 3 kids. We got a little baby, and my daughter, Mia, of course she loves babies anyway, but we had her only maybe 5 days. We knew it was just a short-term thing, why they moved some things around, and she was gonna go to a different home. We took the little girl to DSS to hand her over to let her, go to her new home. And on the way home, my daughter just sobbed, like full body, sobs as she's looking out the car window. And that wasn't normal for her, especially going in understanding it's just, short term. And so as a parent, of course, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've ruined my child. And so we would just speak those same things to her, like, we know God's good, all those things that just didn't seem at the time to do much for me or her. And sometimes you do just have to cry. But it was a very, it was just different for her. And so we heard her one night, soon after, it might have even been that same night, just sobbing in the shower. And I'm like, Jared, we're awful parents, what have we done? And then in the next few minutes, you heard her crying out to God, help me, praying for the little girl, and she wanted her to come back, but she says, I want her back. She wasn't supposed to leave.
And I was standing next to the door, and I remember almost going to tears. And then in that instant when I heard her cry out to God, it was like, all of a sudden I had a huge grin on my face, because I understood what God was doing inside of her heart in that moment. He was teaching her to reach out to Him, and not to us, not to come for us for hug, not that she can't, but that her first reaction was to go to Him inside of that moment. And it was just a beautiful moment, and something that we could have never done on our own to get her to go to that place. It was just through us trusting that inside of this, that God was there, and He was doing something inside of our daughter's heart. So that was really cool. So
we get a call for a placement And we prayed about it and we're like, yeah, okay. Mia said, well, what's her name? And so I get a text and her name was the same name as the little girl. And it, of course, was the same little girl coming back through circumstance, which Mia just was like, I knew she would come back. I knew she was supposed to be here. You know, so then your faith is like, yes, we hear God. He is good. She was with us for 2 years, and we actually, you know, it came termination of rights, you know, or would you be willing to adopt her? And we thought and prayed about it a lot, and we said, yes, we would be willing because of different circumstances. We weren't the family that was chosen. And again, those posts that you hold on to, like, but God is sovereign, and we don't see everything. And if it was just words to me, I think I would have floundered a lot more. But it's like, no, I've seen over and over and over, you are sovereign. You are sovereign when you brought her back, and you're sovereign when she's going to be placed somewhere else. You know, I can't just believe you're sovereign when it seems right to me.
That's the capacity that God's given us, or that's the commissioning that He's given to us. It's kind of like a stop on the way of, but that doesn't mean inside of that we can't import things into their lives that they can take forward into the rest of their lives.
I don't know, you might ask them, they might have a different answer. To involve them in the process as much as possible, to hear them when they're frustrated, you know, to not just be like, well, we're called to this, so you just need to, you know, so are you, so you just need to kind of, you know, suck it up. And so my son just turned 16, you know, he's a 16-year-old boy. He has things he wants to do and things like that. And when we got the call, it was for a kid who was already in care, so it wasn't like a rushed thing. I would say, well, we can either do this or this. He's like, or we could not take one, you know. And he made a lot more comments like that than he normally does. And so I was like, you know, maybe it is time for a longer break.
And on the next morning going to school after we had this conversation, I'm driving Micah to school, or he's driving me to school, you know, because he's about ready to take his driver's test. And we're on the way there, and we always have good little conversations in the morning on the way to school. And he goes, Dad, he goes, I got to tell you something. And I said, well, what's that, buddy? And he goes, all day yesterday, I couldn't stop thinking about that little girl that's supposed to come live with us. And I've been praying about it, and I really think we're probably supposed to take her. And that came from him. It wasn't initiated by us. We didn't tell him to think about it. It was God had put that on his mind that day before all day. And then he expressed that to me, and I was like, well, you need to probably tell your mom that tonight, because she's probably going to be pretty excited to hear that, you know. I just remember God coming alongside me, and I can remember the meeting where I was sitting everything, and he just spoke to me, and just out of the blue, it had nothing to do with even what was going on at the meeting, and he said, Jared, all of your kids are adopted. And that really changed my heart. It broke down those walls, and it only was just a few words, but what that meant to me was that, you know, God's entrusted these kids to us, but they're his. They're not ours. And so I've been able to carry that same heart and that same mindset into every kid going forward that comes into our home. It's like they're his.
I think it's just made it more real. It's not just theory. It's not just in the word. It's real and active in my life, and I can trust it. I've seen that in foster care more than any other place probably the only place in my life, because everything else I'm very like, I can do my job and I can do this, you know. But in foster care, when you are like, I literally can't change another diaper, or this kid's been crying for 2 days straight, you know, I need help. He's made strong in that. I mean, it's brought the word to reality in our lives.
I remember one time them talking about, like, you know, you see a picture drawn of a man, and that's Christ, you know, and then if you were to take a picture of you cut out and then set it next to it, it's probably got a lot of things that don't quite fit into that shape, but it's like each time we walked through a process, it was like a piece of that was cut more like in line with what Christ would look like, that picture, you know. It's like every single time there's a little more refinement, a little more, I'm starting to look more like that figure every single time we did that. And it's just really cool. It's like, it's a beautiful arena to be able to do that in if you're called to do it, you know, so.